dreams that weren't just dreams.
So the new Matrix movie just dropped today, and before I go off and see it myself, I wanted to show you guys how to make that Matrix code environment effect that we saw in the trailers. So we actually saw this effect for the first time in the original Matrix, way back in. Hey Siri, when was the Matrix released?
Which one? I found 8. The
8?
Matrix. The Matrix was released the 8th of April 1999.
Oh shit!
I'm fucking old. So we saw this in the first Matrix, apparently in 1999. The 2021 version is a little bit more subdued and a little bit more subtle. Don't worry, by the end of this, you should be able to make both.
I know.
After Effects.
Show me.
Okay, first step, let's create a new composition that's the same resolution and frame rate as the original footage that you want to apply the effect to. Mine is 1920 by 1080 at 50 frames, and I'm putting in 10 seconds for the duration, even though I'm probably only going to use 5 seconds for this tutorial. Once we've done that, let's create a vertical text layer. Click and hold on the text icon here until the menu pops up and select Vertical Type Tool. Let's just add in some text. It doesn't really matter what you put as long as it's the same height as your composition. By the way, if you're curious, I'm using the Matrix Code NFI font. I'll leave a download link in the description below. We'll select these bottom characters and change them to green, and we'll leave this top one as white. Head over to the Effects and Presets panel and look for Glow, and we'll just drag and drop the effect onto our text layer. Mess around with the effects until you get the desired look. Okay, that's looking great. Let's start animating this. Expand your text layer and you'll see this little play button next to animate. Let's click it and choose character offset from the menu. You'll see a bunch of new properties pop up, and what we want to do is add an expression to the character offset property. Hold Alt for Windows or Option for Mac and click the stopwatch and you'll see an expression window appear. We want to add in a time expression, so let's type in time, and we'll just multiply this by 1. This just means that we're changing the characters every 1 second. Awesome. Now let's pre-comp this and name it text. The next thing we have to do is make the text scroll and make it pop up randomly a bunch of times. Now you could animate this individually, but I like using an emitter because it's much quicker. Create a new solid by right-clicking, selecting New and Solid, and we'll make it larger than our original comp. We'll make it 1920 by 1920. Head over to the Effects and Presets panel and search for Particle World. Drag and drop the effect onto the new solid, and then you see a bunch of new properties pop up. Let's expand the particle properties and change the particle type to textured square. Expand the texture property right underneath and change the texture layer to our text pre-comp, and texture time to from start. Change the birth and death size to 6, and finally change the birth and death color to white. Let's move up to the physics properties now. Change animation to direction axis and change the velocity to 0.1. Turn gravity to 0 and extra to 2, and change the extra angle to 90 degrees. Finally, let's open up the direction axis and change X to 1 and the rest to 0. Alright, I know I'm spinning a lot of numbers, but we're nearly there. Producer properties, let's go. Let's change the Y position by clicking and dragging on the value, either up or down or left or right, it's really up to you. And make sure that this producer, which is this red little circle, sits outside of the bottom of your frame. We'll also take the X radius property and expand it until it covers the entire width of our pre-comp. Finally, change the birth rate to 0.1 and the longevity to 10, and we can hide our text layer now because it's just a reference for the emitter at this point. And press play. That is bloody gorgeous. Nice. Alright, let's pre-comp this and we'll call it code animation. Now let's drag in our footage and motion track it. There are so many different ways to motion track in After Effects. If you're curious and you want to learn how, I've got a video series right here. For today, we'll use a 3D camera tracker. Head over to the Effects and Presets panel and search for Camera Tracker. Drag and drop the effect onto our footage and it'll automatically start solving the camera. Now I've shortened this clip for the sake of this tutorial, so if your 3D camera tracker is taking a little bit longer, just let it do its thing. Once it's done, you'll see these tracking points on your footage. You just want to choose a cluster of 3 points that best represents the perspective of the ground. Once you've found your points, right click and create a null and camera. Now we want to change our code animation into a 3D layer. If you don't see the box, head down to the bottom and hit toggle switch. To turn it into a 3D layer, simply click the cube icon. Hold Alt or Option and click and drag the pick whip so you're linking the code animation to the null object. Our code animation should now be stamped onto our footage using perspective cues from our camera track. Now I'm going to speed this next bit up because it takes a little bit of time to do, but basically what I'm doing is I'm rotating and I'm transforming the code animation layer so that it fits and sits on like the flat faces of the street and on the sides of the buildings. You can use Control or Command D to duplicate the layers and just move them in place, and you can shuffle around the start and end points of each clip to make it feel a little bit more natural. Once you're done, select all the code animation layers, the 3D layer and the null object, and pre-comp, calling it code environment. Now let's make our footage look a little bit more like something out of the Matrix. Duplicate the footage and then in the effects and presets panel, search for find edges and drag and drop it onto our clip. Hit invert so the edges are white and the solids are black, and then we'll add in a tint effect mapping the white to green. Drop in a glow as well and play around with the settings until it looks good. Now I personally like this full black and green look, I think it looks really cool, but if you want to stay true to the trailer, all you have to do is play around with the blending modes and play around with the opacity of each clip. And that's the effect. If there's something particular that you want to learn, leave a comment and I'll try to get to it. Also, I know that the CC cylinder tutorial is like 4 months late, but I promise you it's coming in the new year. You already know what to do to support the channel, and as always, stay creative and go for broke.
Come on, stop trying to hit me and hit me.